inform that MATV is recording this evening's meeting, and two of our Malden residents, Mr. Brian DeLacy and Mr. Crisco tomorrow, will also be recording. So just to be aware, there will be audio and video recordings at this meeting. Thank you.
I have a little idea of February 22nd, 2018 with Mayor Malden. Yes, Mayor Christian, thank you for the time you spent with me on a recent Friday afternoon to discuss the variety of Malden economic development possibilities. As noted, I was impressed with the ongoing construction at the former City Hall. I remain excited about all that is happening in the downtown. Continued congratulations to you and yours for both exhibiting great vision and processing the determination to learn, to turn your planning into action. The entire state is admiring your work. At our meeting, you described the potential housing development at the Malden Hospital site. Well, it is the home of many my birth. I am more excited about the potential going forward. I agree that the redevelopment opportunity provides Malden with an opportunity to continue to extend your well-deserved reputation as a great place to live and grow a family. The potential will attract even more professionals and their families who will surely have a positive impact on the local and regional economics. Also, as we both know, new growth, which is fundamental support for the current and future municipal expenditures, must continue to be a priority, and the project will provide substantial new growth in Malden. For all the reasons we discussed, Malden Hospital residential development project would appear to be a great candidate for future MassWorks awards. MassWorks provides support for public infrastructure that attracts immediate private investment. Of course, Malden would be well aware of the program, as you are currently utilizing MassWorks to help finance work around the City Hall project. I am happy to inform you that the Baker Polito administration would welcome the opportunity to support another exciting Malden project. To that end, I will reserve $2.5 million for infrastructure related for the construction of 250 units of more at Malden Hospital. The redemption of this reservation will require a complete application to be submitted by August. I again remind you that the MassWorks funding process is highly competitive and with many terrific projects looking for awards. This I cannot guarantee that I can renew the reservation, so I would encourage you to do all you can to be in a position to submit a complete application by August. Feel free to contact me, follow up on this commitment, or to discuss other economic development opportunity and projects on your agenda. The Baker Polito administration remains committed to working with you on advancing your community projects. Cheers, J. Ash.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And I believe we'll file that. Okay, so before I introduce our guests tonight, I want to thank all of you in attendance and all that are watching on MATV. It's great to see a full house here. Our guest this evening is Fellsmere Housing Group. Before I welcome them to the podium, I would like to state that the mission here this evening is to share information on a new proposal for a development where the previous Malden Hospital once was. It is my personal mission to continue to provide transparency to each of my fellow colleagues and our community to further encourage collaboration with all including our community groups such as the Friends of Fellsmere Heights, and as well as the owner of this property, Hallmark Health Wellforce. With that being said, we welcome you to the podium. Please state your name for the record, and thank you for coming in front of us this evening.
I'm Tony Green of the FellsmereHousingGroup. We have some posters. I'm not quite sure what the best way to display them both to you and to the audience is. Should we bring one up close?
Are they the same?
They're the same, yes, we got two.
No, maybe one for the audience and one for us. That would be great. Thank you, Mr. Green.
Pieces that will pass out, and you already have, I believe, a site plan and a list of benefits. So first, thank you for the opportunity to address the council. We're very appreciative. I'd like to introduce my partners, Bill Kress, who's passing out the pamphlets, Mike Skeldon, there in the front row, as well as Brian McGrail, attorney who represents Hallmark Wellforce. Back from the mayor's letter in January to the council, as well as your invitation, we had the opportunity to listen and participate quite a bit since the summer of 2014 when we signed a purchase and sale agreement with Hallmark Healthcare. After we held several public meetings at the BB School, and then the city instituted a moratorium for 2016. The end of 2016, as that first moratorium was drawing to a close, we held a meeting in a tent on the site with over 200 residents attending. And then the moratorium was extended again for the year of 2017. Much input, more meetings, and here we are. Those meetings, as well as the individual ones we held with groups of neighbors, have altered our plans, specifically leading to the concept of donating land for a public park, and changed our proposal. We appreciate the opportunity to present our plan and its benefits, and we understand very clearly that the council does not have to say yes to this decision, and that but we appreciate the opportunity to be heard and to be voted up or voted down. I'll go through the plan quickly and then talk a bit about the benefits. Can you point there? What are the items? Bill, you want to do this one? Bill, I guess I'm going to do this. It's not shining, of course. Well, the plan shows Hospital Road at the bottom of the plan. It runs from north to south, or from south to north as you go from left to right. You can see the Malden Healthcare Center, as well as the Glenwood Nursing Home, and the city line between Malden and Medford. There are 3 home types on the plan. There are 18 single-family cottages that line the easterly side of Hospital Road, where the existing boiler building and nurses building currently stand, as well as some parking. And then there are 18 townhomes that sit in the parking lot that's up behind the building towards Murray Hill Road. And then there are 214 condominiums in a single building that has 1 longer leg and 2 shorter legs. You can also see around those buildings the darker trees that have grown up around the hospital over the 100 years that the hospital has been there. And then you can see the lighter green area that will be landscape that we will be adding primarily over either existing building or former parking. In addition, there's a trail network that runs through those preserved trees, and that trail network will be built by us and maintained by us, but open to the public. We think this plan and this investment is good for Malden, and I'd like to describe to you why. The density has gone from 314 homes to 250. The number of apartments has gone from 224 to 0. It is an all-ownership proposal. Our target market is empty nesters, both younger and older, and the homes are design-oriented to appeal to that particular demographic. The single-family homes, the cottages, and the townhomes all have first-floor master suites and secondary bedrooms upstairs. Most young families are not interested in living on a different level than their young children. And similarly, most young families would prefer a home with a yard than a condominium building that is larger. The 18 cottages, 18 townhomes, and 214 condominiums all sit in the footprint of the old buildings or parking. You can actually see the outline faintly in a little sort of orangey line underneath the main buildings. Lastly, all of the risk of this proposal is borne by us, the developer, none by the city. Additionally, there are the following public benefits. We would donate 2 acres contiguous to Fellsmere Park that has views of Boston. And Fellsmere Park, as wonderful as it is, does not have any location within it that has a view of the city. But this portion in the southeast corner of the site does. And instead of building there, we think that that should be addition to Fellsmere Park. And it's also right above the stairs that originally connected the park to the hospital grounds before the nurses' building was built. There are 7 acres of trees that are preserved as a natural buffer to our neighbors that would otherwise be cut down with more traditional development. We would build and maintain that trail loop that connects to Fellsmere's existing loop so that there is now a longer walk that the public can take that runs through those preserved trees. And that is built and maintained by us and then continues to be an obligation of the homeowners after that. The proposal narrows Hospital Road with on-street parking and a continuous sidewalk path to discourage cut-through traffic and slow traffic down. The proposal supplements the MBTA bus with rush hour shuttles to the Orange Line, so there'll be less likelihood of driving. We estimate that the total new tax revenue from this community would be $1.5 million annually. We have proposed a $500,000 grant to the city from Fellsmere Housing Group for public improvements. The plan that you're looking at utilizes 2.4 acres of the 17.5 acre site for building footprint, reducing building footprint and paved parking surfaces substantially. We would place an open space covenant which restricts any further development and protects those trees and trails after we're done. This plan responds to what we have heard. It is the best proposal we can make. We hope that the council will choose to create a zoning overlay so that the site of Malden Hospital can become a productive part of the city of Malden again. We would hope that you would refer this matter to the ordinance committee to create with us, with the developer, a zoning overlay that would permit 250 homes and protect the open space in a planned community to replace the former Malden Hospital. We understand that change is always hard. We look forward to working with you to make this a positive change for the city of Malden. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Green.
Let's see, we did have a microphone.
Mr. Winslow.
Yeah, I have a question about the condo building. How many stories is that?
That building is, generally speaking, a 4-story building with structured parking underneath, 4 and 5, depending on where you are.
Okay.
Shorter than the existing hospital.
Sure. You know, I know, back in June of 2017, 9 members of this council voted for a restriction on buildings over 3 stories outside of downtown. So I just point that out. I mean, it's a very very recent thing, many other people sitting on this council. So in terms of trying to get to yes, I guess that's something we are hearing adamantly about, trying to keep buildings at that scale. I think from my campaigning in this neighborhood, I'm over on the other side of town, and what I realized in campaigning in this neighborhood is this neighborhood is caught between this vice of 93 and the Fells Way, and traffic is a huge thing. It's not just on you, but this is more to the city itself. We too often deal with traffic by just doing it on a piecemeal basis for each development. And one of the things I think is important that we work on as a city, and as we go forward, that we actually do some citywide transportation planning. That's one of the things I think is a deficiency, and it hampers the willingness. You look at our moratorium survey, the biggest complaint from citizens and why they supported the moratorium was traffic congestion. So, $2.5 million is helpful, but I think we need it as a transportation strategy as a city so that we solve these problems for our citizens, not just deal with them on a piecemeal basis. The other thing out of the moratorium study that's very important is, people, in terms of housing, they really prioritize senior housing and inclusionary zoning to be affordable for people here from all. So can you explain, and you talked about this being for empty nesters, are you willing to commit to or discuss making this a 55 and over development? Is that something that's under consideration or just something by design? So that's one of the questions.
So our proposal is to orient ourselves to that empty nester, both by type of building and by design, especially in the detached and townhome style dwellings with the master bedroom on the first floor. We would be eliminating about half our market if we were to go with something that required everyone to be 55. And the jump to go to for sale, we need to be able to have a broader market in order to have an opportunity to be successful. And the one example I would give is that at Pine Hills, our permits are not restricted by age, and yet there are very few school children because of those design activities. In fact, in 2,000 homes, there are only 42 children in the schools.
Okay, and then finally, I know a lot of people here are from the Friends of Fellsmere Heights, and there's a proposal out there that the 16+2 proposal, and I know I've gone to the couple meetings that Councilor Matheson has co-chaired with Medford, and there was a mention of that proposal and a limit to 100 units, and I think personally, to have this go forward, I think that needs to be more seriously vetted. I know that that is not something that you as a developer would commit to, but I think it's the type of thing that we as a community should look at that and know if that's what the community wants, then what responsibility and cost the community might have to pick up to make that happen. So to me, I really want to see community-led development. I really want to understand that proposal from the Friends of Fellsmere Heights better, and I think that we should make sure that in considering any proposal here, that we also give serious consideration to that proposal and make it the best the citizens can be. So I think there's got to be more work there. So that's just, in order to get to yes as a community and see this move forward, certainly we understand that if the community is asking for more community benefits, we might have to step up and pursue grants to make that happen. But I want to understand that too in this context of not just looking at developers' proposal. There's a community proposal. We should look at that in terms of when this comes to ordinance, or maybe we should assign both ordinance and look at, coming up with a rule that will work and understanding that. So that's my comments. That's my comments tonight.
Thank you, Councilor Winslow. Councilor Camille.
Mr. Green, thank you for coming. Have you done estimates? I know you said some anecdotes about the other development. Have you done a study to estimate how many students? And if you, just to follow this, and if you have, do you take into consideration the design element, or do you just look at the square footage and the location? Because design element, effective as it may or may not be, it's still a very desirable neighborhood and city. So that demand might override that desire.
We have done some work. We would need to do further to update that. But in the work that we did previously, which had some of these same home types in it, we counted the home types as if they were any square footage and did it on the average that occurs in the city of Malden as opposed to the average we achieved elsewhere.
Do you have a number that you can?
Well, it was on a slightly different proposal that had more homes in total. So we have not gone back and actually had that work done. As we go through the process, we'll have to do that.
Okay, so no.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Green. I see no further lights, and thank you for your time and your presentation. To the audience, this is not a public commentary, but I'm sure you would be willing to take questions from the audience outside in the foyer, should there be a need. So I thank you. Councilor Matheson?
Yeah, I think we all have an interest in hearing from the public when they do have something to say, and clearly I think we have more members here observing than we normally do for our city council meetings. I would just be willing to sponsor anyone that has any comments that they'd like to share after hearing the presentation. Unless there's an objection from my colleagues. I know we did a lot of discussion about having a public commentary period in the past. Well, here's our chance to put conversation into practice.
Well, Councilor, while I highly respect the community, last year public commentary was voted down, and that was a paper I brought forth. So, but I think what I would like to say from council presidency is that Friends of Fellsmere Heights, who I believe the majority are here in attendance, are more than welcome to come maybe in 2 weeks and have a presentation. We welcome you. We do hope that your presentation can come forth. And I speak for all the councilors here, and
I think you do. I don't think you do speak for all the councilors.
Okay, Councilor Matheson.
Yeah, if someone would like, does anyone have any comment? Maybe I'm just wasting my time by having this debate, but does anyone wish to speak? Just raise your hand. I only see one person, two people. So I'll make a motion unless there's objection. I think the rules call for a
I'll
vote.
second that.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good, thank you. So as you come up, just please state your name, and we welcome you. Who wants to be first?
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Rita Zapala. I live at 17 Hickory Ave in Medford, which is 1 block north of Malden Hospital. I work and take the train at Malden Station. Coming from my home down into this area here in the morning is a nightmare. We have people cutting through all the time. Every time we've gone through trying to do one-ways, and that didn't work. We've tried, and I guess that's on the Medford side, we've tried to prohibit for residents only, and that did not work also. All those signs came down. If you've ever been, and I certainly hope before you make any decisions, you travel down those roads between 8 and 8:30, or even 7:45 and 8:30, it's a nightmare. People do not let you go by. We have people coming up from the Fellsway cutting through up through Fulton Street to get onto 93 to avoid the lights that are in that area going down into Medford, into the Fellsway. As far as narrowing the hospital road, I'm a little conflicted. That road is used for ambulances, for buses that go up to the nursing home. Just confused about that. The traffic that all this housing would be bringing into that area, I can't even imagine. And if that happens, I know myself and quite a few of my neighbors, we're all in a very condensed area. We don't have big backyards, small backyards, but I can tell you a lot of us are leaving. And this is terrible for Medford, and I know it's bad for Malden. I have many friends in Malden. And I think this is a huge proposal for that small an area. Right now, we have a traffic issue, and nothing is up in the Malden Hospital. I can only imagine what it's going to be like if anything this big goes in there. And I hope you all take that into consideration. It's Medford and it's Malden, and we have commuters from every other city that come in here. Thank you for giving me the time.
Thank you very much.
How you doing? John Terosian, Malden. With her saying that too about the traffic, that is another issue. Yep, I can understand that. I've been there before. And also, if you do go through this with this development, what about the veterans? Veterans who are disabled, especially with the Disability Act, should have some type of housing up there for them. And I just feel that the veterans are going to be cheated out of this project very badly. I was a member of Malden community for a long time, still will be. I was born and raised in Malden Hospital, so I know what it's like up there. And it's a good piece of chunk of land, but my consideration is you should try to do something for the veterans, because they're being outcast. That's how I feel about it. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Good evening. I'm Neil Kinnett, 11 Spruce Street. I didn't expect to speak this evening, didn't expect the opportunity, but I will hopefully be brief. 2 years ago, almost 2.5 years ago, we had 3 questions on the ballot in 2015. Those 3 questions started with the moratorium question. And then added on to that was the question about Malden Hospital and what should happen there, and tied in very cleverly by the folks who led the CPA question. They tied it into a campaign that said, vote yes on questions 1, 2, 3. I believe I'm the only councilor who actually participated in some of those meetings with the folks who pushed the CPA on numerous times for many hours. And the strategy was actually discussed on how to tie it in to the moratorium question. And surprisingly, even to me, on election day, the moratorium came in at 68%, wanting the moratorium on all multi-unit housing outside of the downtown area. And there was a compromise here to get the question on the ballot so that that was excluded, the downtown and the RIOs. The moratorium, the CPA passed with 55% of the vote. The first time, I believe, Councilor Condon and Councilor Anderson, certainly more longevity than myself here, but the first time, I believe, in the history of the city that the public voted to give themselves a tax increase. And to get a tax increase with 55% plurality is an amazing thing. And the third question on what to do about the hospital, the citizens voted 71% for this city to look for a way to acquire the hospital. We then, as a council, the council of 2015, immediately voted to go forward with the moratorium and growth management study. And what we asked the folks from Community Opportunities Group was to come back with a fiscal impact analysis, which they did, to perform 4 forums across the city in various locations, which they did, and then also to help us design a questionnaire survey, which they did. All but 1 or 2 of those questions came from them, and then we distributed that online, in boxes, to every senior citizen house, and some of the ward councils even dropped it door to door. We had the largest response in the history of this city. Over 2,000 people took that survey. Statistically, 99% plus or minus 3%. Significant. We only get, in the election, 6,054 votes. So that was well over a third. When they take a survey for the president or a senator or anybody like that, if they get 1,000 people, they can tell what the people want done. We got 2,000 when only 6,000 voted in a municipal election. In every single ward, it was a landslide in the survey on what should be done outside of downtown, on multi-unit housing, and it was stop. 73% of the people who took the survey said they wanted no buildings, and this is critical to what Councilor Winslow said, wanted no buildings above 3 stories outside of the downtown. Only 14% said that they would be willing to have buildings above 3 stories. The same percentage said they didn't want housing of 20 apartments or more, or multi-unit housing, unless it was for seniors outside of the downtown area. We won't get into the downtown tonight, only outside. 86% of the people who took the survey said they wanted population not to grow beyond 65,000 people. You never get an election where 86% agree on anything. But our citizens have had it with traffic, have had it with infrastructure across the city that cannot be fixed. And we all sit up here and wonder why, but that fiscal analysis tells us all why. Building multi-unit housing has not been kind to the city. Since 1992, every expert that's ever come in here, and we can go back if we need to, but every expert that has ever come in here has said, there'll be no children. I'll give you a plan where there's no children. Well, we built 3,000 plus units since 1992, almost all, about 90% rental or condos. We have condos up in Briar Hill. We were promised condos down in Linden. We know what happened there as soon as we hit the tough times, they came in here at Overlook and whined about how they couldn't sell condos. Well, we're probably a year or 2 out from the next recession. So we could be looking at empty buildings up there as well. But 3,000 units were built. We were told there'd be no more population because the demographics would show that the population was going to decline. We had 53,000 people in the city. Last year, the study told us we have 63,000, and it may be higher. And the census was telling us in 2000 that we were only going to have 53,000. We had 56,450. And the census people told us in 2010, oh, you haven't grown from 56,000. And we had 60,000.
Mr. Kinnon, respecting everyone's time, can I just give you a couple of seconds just to wrap it up?
I will wrap it up.
Because I wasn't even expecting this tonight. Thank you.
I will wrap it up. So the census has been wrong in every single time, and the developers have been wrong, and MAC MAPC sold us down the road in 2008. There's a survey from 2007, and the people told us in that survey from the last moratorium to stop growing apartments and condos. Stop. We didn't. Well, now we're here. And 1 year ago, less than 1 year ago, as Councilor Winslow says, this council voted no height limits above 3 stories outside of downtown. This council also voted to give the Friends of Fellsmere time and possibly $5 million on a loan or something like that from the reserve. And that doesn't end until June 30th. And we also had the CPA, which was passed. And if you went out there and polled people right now, they believe that this city, no chance, would develop that Hospital Hill in the manner that's being discussed here tonight, and that they would do everything in their power for the city to acquire it, even if they have to wait out time. Finally, we owe nothing to Hallmark Health. Nothing. Who has taken us around the block, closed the hospital that they said they were going to keep open. And the only persons who win, if you do this, if you change the zoning, you don't have to, it's Residence A. The only people who win, we reward Hallmark Health probably to the tune of millions of dollars by changing that zoning for being such a good neighbor all these years to us. I'll close that. Thank you.
I'm so sorry.
Hi, my name is Kim Sterry, and I live at 73 Bowman Street. I'm a homeowner. Lived in Malden all my life. I just think we need to take care of the people that are here already. I think that the traffic, as mentioned, it's just atrocious. I'll give you a good example of a parking problem. The last time we came to a meeting here, we had to park on Irving Street. Irving Street. I mean, you know, it's pretty far. It's ridiculous. But Malden is definitely bursting at the seams, and we really need to think about this. This is monumental. Also, I'm a nurse, and I did work for Hallmark Health for almost 10 years. And another thing that I have not heard anyone say is, what if there was, you know, God forbid, some kind of a catastrophe or something? We really need a hospital. It would be nice. You know, Lawrence Memorial is downsizing. We do have Melrose Wakefield and Cambridge Health Alliance and Everett, but I mean, it would be something to think about to reinstitute a hospital there. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. So, I think I'm going to take the liberty of setting up maybe a public forum where we all can speak, and there's not a time constraint here. I hope you wouldn't mind, but...
We have one more person?
Okay, but this is it, so I hope you can understand I'm trying to run this meeting, so.
Well, you did call for
Thank you.
FellsmereHousingGroup to be here.
Thank you, Councilor.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I understand that you, Councilor DeMaria, are very supportive of people to come up and at the council meetings have something to say. I just want to speak in hypothetically. When you think about it, the city is very, very lacking in open space. Now focus on the schools. Inside, evidently, there's no room for the kids, okay? But what I see when I drive by, it really hurts me to see that the Malden kids do not have playgrounds contiguous to the schools. I see opportunities lost to acquire land that might have been helpful even at the high school site, and even at the Forestdale site, where maybe the kids could have more space outside. So think of kids who don't get up here as adults and have somebody to speak for them. think of them out in the playgrounds, not able to throw a ball more than 10 feet at recess time, because they're almost hoarded into little postage stamp playgrounds, okay? So here's an opportunity not only to get a finger on the number of kids that we have by not overdeveloping, and no matter how you slice it, this is something that Malden has control of. We can't control all the traffic coming through the city, okay? So, just to sum it up, here's an opportunity to acquire some land for open space for not just the kids, but for everybody to enjoy. Grandparents, children, grandchildren, etc. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you just state your name for the record?
I'm sorry. Len Marullo, 134 Dexter Street, Malden. I've been a resident of Malden for over 45 years. Same house at that location, 40 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we are going to move on, and Yes, Councilor.
I realize that you'd like to move on, but you did add this docket item to the agenda. So I think we all want to speak our piece. So I'm a Ward 3 councilor, and almost every day that I leave my house, I talk to neighbors. And the most frequent thing that I'm asked is what's happening with Malden Hospital. And some of the comments I hear is along the lines of, well, we understand that a deal has already been made, and you're not going to listen to the people on this one. Well, I'd like to thank the speakers that have come up and spoken their mind as residents of this community. And I'd also like to circle back to some things that former Councilor Kinnan had said. We did a lot of outreach, not only with the moratorium and the 2,000 person survey, as well as the visioning project in 2007, but also the ballot questions in 2015. And one thing that's very consistently clear is that the residents are asking that we do not add more dense projects. And this is no disrespect to Mr. Green and his group. I think they're fine people with a fine project. It's the wrong location. And we're not here to serve developers. We're here to serve the residents. The city belongs to the residents. And one thing I'm just very frustrated with, and then I'll close, Madam President, because I would like to go on to other business as well. I did not expect this group to come present today. I learned about it when it was on the docket, just like everyone else. I want you to know that. But one thing that frustrates me is that when you have the support of some people in leadership, you can lock down a valuable parcel of land that the public would like to see a better use for. So we have had to live next to an abandoned blight that a tax-exempt organization has decided to land bank and only sell for its highest market rate value with very little or no concern for this community. That's not acting like a charitable organization. That's acting like profiteers, no less so than ExxonMobil or any of those large corporations that are traded on the S&P 500 or NASDAQ or Dow Exchange. And that's a shame, because for the last 4 years we've had one developer, and I have repeatedly written Hallmark Health to open a dialogue with them and received no response from them. Only one developer that tweaks a single proposal for 4 years in a row while we let land go unused. And the same thing happened to the National Grid site, and I look around to other communities and I see what's happening in Wellington Circle, and I see what's happening over in Assembly Row, the economic boom that's happening from commercial properties, and our leaders want to say yes to developers so impetuously that our traffic spirals out of control. There is very little regard to traffic. The traffic problems get worse. The BB has the least amount of square footage per student right now. It's full. Where are the considerations for the future of our city and the ramifications of this untrammeled growth? You can't just tell me that the answer to the traffic problems is to ride a bike. That's not practical. And I love bikes, Councilor Winslow. But we need to concern ourselves with the quality of life here in this community and the residents that took the time to answer the surveys and go to the ballot box and elect us to come up with an answer. And I'm going to close there. I think I've said enough. Thank you all for speaking your minds.
Thank you, Councilor Winslow. We have another light, Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to start by saying that there has been a lot of misinformation going out recently about multifamily homes in Malden and about the priorities of certain councilors here. I'm pretty sure I can speak very definitively that neither myself or any of my colleagues on the City Council want to see any 12-story buildings in Malden going forward. That is something that just is not true. That is something that we and I will not support. But I think it's important to say, because while the same way the square is a citywide asset, the former Malden Hospital site is a citywide asset that requires citywide involvement. And I think it's very important that when whatever proposal is brought before the City Council, whether it's from the Fellsmere Housing Group or Friends of Fellsmere Heights, I think citywide collaboration is crucial. And I think that this is the first step. And I'd like to thank my colleague, Council President DiMaria, for bringing this to the public and having it televised, because transparency is important. And subcommittees don't, while they meet often and they meet diligently and effectively, are not always the most transparent means of getting business done. So I'm very happy that this has been out here in the open and that it's very well attended. I wish every City Council meeting was well attended like this. One of the things I would love to see as a result of this meeting is that Friends of Fellsmere Heights and the Hallmark Health, Well-Forest property owner, and the potential developer meet and have real, honest dialogue about how you can make a project like this work. It's my understanding, and I do see many members from Friends of Fellsmere Heights here, and I'd like to hear from you if you have a response, but it's my understanding that your proposal, and I want green space. I'm a former park ranger. I would love for the whole parcel to be a park. I'd like the whole city to be completely forested again. It would be great. I don't know if it's necessarily reasonable or reliable or feasible to do that. It's my understanding that the Friends of Fellsmere Heights proposal actually has a multifamily component to it. There will be a multifamily building on the proposal that Friends of Fellsmere Heights have. So it would be nice to hear what Friends of Fellsmere Heights have to say, because I think this is an opportunity to collaborate. You don't have to necessarily do it here tonight, but we would all like to hear from you to make sure that we can get the best result possible. So like I said, thank you so much for being here. I hope this results in great dialogue, and as you know, we are all here to serve you guys, so thank you.
Okay, I see no further lights, so we're... Councilor Anderson, pardon me.
Yes, thank you. Didn't think I needed to speak, but I feel compelled to say that I'm glad that there was this presentation here this evening, and I look forward to the other proposals coming forward. I think we need to hear all of them. We need to hear what's being proposed. We need to hear from the citizens of Malden as to what it is that they're looking for. We have some tough decisions to make, there's no question about that, and the buck stops here with us, but I encourage you all to come back when there is another proposal. Earlier last year, there was the discussion about having each of these council meetings with a period of time where the public can come up and speak. I voted against that because I don't think that's the right way to do it. I think the right way to do it is on particular subjects where one of the councilors wishes to, or if someone comes to them for the opportunity to speak. And And this was a perfect example of that playing out very nicely. So thank you all for being here. Thanks for the great comments heard on all sides, and I look forward to hearing more about it. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Counselor. Okay, so we're seeing no further lights. We're going to move forward with the approval of the minutes.